Hi, Ann.
Hello, Larry. How are you?
Well, I'm a little pissed off right now looking at what's going on in Florida. What's happening down there?
The same thing that happened in Minnesota in 2008 and is happening in Arizona. Democrats lose a close election and think, we can fix that. So all of these Democratic counties start, quote, counting ballots, i.e. casting ballots, and, oh, look, we got some more here and some more here. You know, if it went the other way once in a while, maybe in this election, there are at least three, Arizona, Florida governor, Florida Senate, and weirdly, days after the election, it always goes to the Democrat.
Isn't that amazing?
No, I'm sorry, no one's believing that anymore. And by the way, it came out years later that Al Franken did steal his election. They found, I think it was John Fund's reporting, in the day after the election, Norm Coleman had won by the Republican by several thousand votes. In the end, Al Franken won by a few hundred votes, and they determined that a certain number of ineligible felons, they'll be eligible in the future, thank you, Florida, at least in Florida they will be, had voted. The way they determined this was by having the felons admit, I knew I wasn't allowed to vote. I mean, they have found lots of felons who had voted, but in order to pursue them criminally, they had to admit, yes, and I knew I wasn't allowed to cast that ballot. So, at the time, John Lott, the esteemed economist, looked at the ballots that were coming in from all Democratic areas in Minnesota and said, this is statistically impossible.
Yeah. Well, and
that's what they're doing.
And that is and listen, states have laws that oversee the rules with regard to voting, collecting the ballots, and counting the ballots. The reason that the laws are there is so that everyone plays by those rules, and this kind of thing can't happen. And the law is just being flouted, and no one seems to have a problem with that. Certainly not in the media. And the only histrionic preening that you see from the Joe Scarboroughs of the world is, well, every vote should be counted. Well, not necessarily, Ann. I mean,
well, no, every legitimate vote should be counted.
Legitimate
vote.
How
they defend vote fraud. This is watering down votes that were counted by canceling them out with votes that weren't cast, that are being cast for imaginary people long after the election. And I mean, the way they end up counting, quote, counting these ballots, get into that for a minute. For example, in the Minnesota race in 2008, some guy didn't vote for either Coleman or Franken. He wrote in Frankenstein. Guess who that was counted for? I'm
Coleman.
Sorry, the ballots are really, really clear.
Yeah.
90-year-old farmers can figure it out. It explains it right there on the ballot. Do you draw a line? Do you fill in the bubble? If you look at that and say, hey, I think I'm just going to circle the guy I want to vote for. No, that shouldn't count. Maybe you learn to do it right next time.
Right.
And by the way, as we're discussing all these Democratic voters who can't figure out how to read a ballot where it says, fill in the circle of the candidate you want, or draw a line connecting the arrow for the candidate you want.
Yeah.
Just
punch
keep
the
this in
Chad
mind the next time you hear about how can't put any conservatives on CNN or MSNBC because conservatives just aren't smart enough.
Right.
Okay.
Now you talked about this a lot in your book, Never Trust a Liberal Over Three, especially a Republican, which is possibly one of your greatest book titles, by the way.
That is a good one.
It is, but you talked about this quite a bit, and this is what frustrates me, Ann. You're seeing a bunch of people screaming about election rules and screaming about election fraud over the last couple of days. Why aren't they talking about this like our friend Chris Kobach and Hans von Spakovsky and Christian Adams and a bunch of other? Why don't they talk about this all year long? Because God knows the Democrats are focusing on it all year round.
That's a great point. I mean, I won't say all of, that would be a gross generalization. Most of the left's victories are attained by cheating. Whether it's, we tried to persuade Americans to accept gay marriage. And by the way, I don't care what you think of gay marriage. I don't care if you're for or against it. It was rejected in state after state after state when people were allowed to vote. I think 34 states in all. There were a few legislatures that passed it. But when there were initiatives, even in places like Oregon and California, California, with the pro-traditional marriage side being way outspent, the voters continuously repeatedly, emphatically rejected gay marriage.
By the way,
liberals thought to themselves, I know, we don't need people to vote for this in a democracy. We have our super legislature, the Supreme Court. Yay! And this is how, when they can't get things passed in democracy, they go to the Supreme Court, which is why they were so mental over Kavanaugh. And, oh my gosh, wait for Ruth Bader Ginsburg to retire. They're going to shut the Senate down. They'll do to the United States Senate what they did to Tucker Carlson's house earlier this week.
By the way, that year that California voted to maintain the traditional definition of marriage was the same year they overwhelmingly voted for the most progressive president in our history, Barack Obama.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not like it was a mistake at the ballot box. And
recall how the left reacted to that. It was, in fact, black voters came out in force to vote for Obama both times. Black voters apparently did not favor gay marriage, but did liberals scream about black people? No. They decided to direct their ire at the Mormons.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. All that Mormon money coming in from Utah. They flooded the state with... That's right. There aren't a whole lot of Mormons in California. Ag Coulter is our guest, of course. Can you stay with us for another segment? Oh, good. But before we turn from Florida, we only have like a minute left. The Republicans are clueless on this, right? I mean, I'm not just overstating the case. They are not prepared for what's about to hit them. You'd think they would be after 2000, but are they lawyering up?
They would be, and they need to get their act together. I mean, this was something I remember from the 2000 election. Our Republican lawyers didn't know that military ballots, oh, by the way, that's one area where the Democrats will be absolute sticklers for the rules when it comes to the military ballots. Military ballots, by law, don't have to be postmarks because they're being sent from frigates in the Persian Gulf. They don't need a postal stamp. And yet, military ballots were being rejected in Florida for not having postal stamps. Why didn't Republicans know what the law was? No, you need you're exactly right. We need people who actually know what the law is and work on this 365 days a year.
Amen. Ann Coulter, we're going to stay with her. Reaching that time of year, by the way, where you're scratching your head thinking, what are we going to get Dad for Christmas? God, I never know what to get Dad for Christmas. Here's what you get, Dad. You get Dad, Resistance is Futile, how the Trump-hating left lost its collective mind. I have never in my life met a father who isn't happy to see Ann Coulter wrapped in a bow under the tree come Christmas morning. That came out wrong, Ann, but you know what I mean. I don't know if the baby Jesus would approve of that. Ann, thanks for continuing with us here. So here we have this lame duck session of Congress coming up where the Republicans don't have to worry about getting reelected because, that ship sailed. All those things that they said they couldn't do. Oh, we can't build the wall. We can't pay for the wall, and we can't cut the budget, and we can't risk a government shutdown because, we might not win reelection. Well, they lost anyway. Is now the time, Ann, where they can actually get that wall built? Will they actually have the cojones?
That's a great idea. Why don't they do it now? Well, I guess because they're going for their lobbying jobs or their corporate jobs. That's the whole idea of not voting for a wall in the first place. The Koch brothers want the cheap labor pouring in. After I guess it was Molly Hemingway sat on.
Yes, with Jerry Nadler. Wasn't that great? I love Molly.
Jerry Nadler. But I love that she got this reporting, but wow, is Jerry Nadler right? They have completely lost, the Democratic Party has lost its traditional, what it has always claimed to be for, the browns and blacks, the working class. And why have they lost it? Because they've decided to be for foreign workers over American workers. I would be perfectly happy if the Democrats stole this issue from the Republicans. Maybe you guys will build a wall. I'll come out and campaign for Jerry Nadler or Pocahontas or whomever they want to run.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Right.
You
just
campaigning
build the wall.
Yeah.
Because we're a country. This is obviously what put Donald Trump in the Oval Office. For some reason, he doesn't want to do it, and neither do the Republicans. I mean, it's never been so clear. It was the first time it was very clear. It was during the Trump campaign that our country is run by, for, and about the rich, the Wall Street crowd. Trump seemed to be the first refreshing exception to that, We've got a few things out of them. Incidentally, the state and local tax deduction that ended in New York State, New York politicians will tell you, oh, it's hurting our state. You're hurting the working people of New York. No one, unless there's a $10,000 deduction. So unless you're making at least $200,000 a year, your taxes go down, even in New York State, without the state state and local tax deduction. So there were a few good things in the tax cut bill, but by and large, most people, or certainly half the country, doesn't pay taxes. That's not what they care about. They don't want foreign workers coming in and running through their schools, making their local taxes go up for their schools, and you're not getting as many services because they have to have staff on hand at the local emergency room who speak 17 different languages or 70 different languages, ballots in 70 different languages, English as a second language classes instead of Christmas pageants and fireworks displays, and their wages are being driven down. This is the main issue, and it separates the mice from the men. I'm appalled by my own party. I've never really expected much from the Democratic Party, but I like your idea. Show us you're not just beholden to your corporate masters, and vote for funding for the wall.
Well, I appreciate you liking my idea, but I still like your original idea, which you've been saying since before the inauguration, which is he doesn't need Congress to build the wall. And in an ironic way, this caravan that the media used to love and now they pretend isn't there, couldn't this actually trigger the president's national security ability to build that wall without Congress? And listen, this is about our security. I'm the commander-in-chief. Build the wall.
Yes, he absolutely could. I'm hoping the Democrats taking the House will trigger his fighting instincts. The main reason I would like Congress to vote for funding for a wall is to get Democrats on the record voting against it. Get them on the record voting for anchor babies and for sanctuary cities. If we could have a private ballot on that where everybody gets to vote, like the gay marriage vote, all three of those would pass by 80% margin.
Yep. Ann Coulter, it's always good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you.
Hopefully we'll catch you before Christmas so I can make that very creepy statement about being under a tree in a bow again.
I love that.
Did you? Thank God, because I saw my career pass before my eyes. Thanks, Ann.
Goodbye.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. There's a lot of shenanigans going on in Florida. And the man who was the first to call it out and is deeply concerned about it is Senator Marco Rubio. Senator Rubio, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing well, and I'm blessed, but I'm concerned about what's happening down here with Broward County and partially Palm Beach as well.
Tell us the latest.
Well, let's just start with the basics. The basics are that in Florida, our early vote, the law requires early votes, which ended on Sunday, to be tabulated, downloaded to your system, and then uploaded to the state before 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday night. That did not happen in Palm Beach County. It did not happen in Broward County, and it eventually happened in Palm Beach County about a day and a half later, but it has still not been fully completed with Broward County. Now, adding fuel to that fire is not only have they not sent it, they have refused to tell anyone exactly how many additional ballots they have received or are counting. So we have and that's a public record law, and here's the second point. It is true that in every election cycle, there are still votes for another few days because you have ballots come in from overseas, military and the like. You're supposed to report that every 45 minutes. Palm Beach County has not reported. They're still sitting on an untold number of absentee ballots, mail ballots. We don't know how many haven't been reported to the state yet. And they are also, and then Broward County, who still has early votes, and they have not reported since 7:30 last night and have only been reporting once or twice a day. Palm Beach hasn't reported at all since 10:30 in the morning on Wednesday. So they're not complying with the law. Governor took them to court. The court found that Broward County supervisor has violated the Constitution, violated Florida law, and issued a court order that she make all this public by 7 p.m. tonight. And I'm just obviously awaiting you here to see what the governor has been able to get in terms of just understanding what we're dealing with.
It's amazing, isn't it, Senator? You have a lot of counties in Florida. It's a big state. It's got a big population. And it always comes down to this handful of Democrat counties, doesn't it? How does that happen?
Well, in fairness, let's look at that. That's one of the problems that I have, right? So Miami-Dade County had more votes, had more ballots cast. It is voted Democrat. It always does, 61% for Senator Nelson, 60-something% for Gillum. They got their work done. I mean, I'm not happy about the result. I wish we would have won it, but, they got their work done. So Broward County's excuses, we're really big. We have a lot of voters. You don't have more voters than Miami-Dade. And then I look at Bay County, where Panama City is. They got hit by a Category 4 hurricane 4 weeks ago, a little bit over 4 weeks. They had no power for at least 2.5 weeks in some cases. They had 52% turnout, and they were able to turn around their election. Now, is it smaller? Sure, but they also have less personnel. So it's just not excusable. And this is not new, Mark. I mean, this is a woman who runs this department who has been caught destroying ballots. There was a recount in the Wasserman-Schultz race 2 years ago. When the court finally ordered her to produce the ballots, they found out she had destroyed them. They were opening absentee ballots early. And in Palm Beach, a very partisan person, I served with her in the legislature, Susan Booker, is the elections chief. In the governor's court case today, he has a sworn statement from an individual under penalty of perjury saying that they witnessed ballots being replaced. If there's a damaged ballot, the law allows you to replace it by making a duplicate ballot. But you have to do that in the presence of witnesses, representatives from the campaign. They did not allow representatives, at least from Scott's campaign, to watch them making the new ballots. So that is a big warning sign. There's going to be a lot to work through here.
Why don't people ever go to jail over this stuff, or do they?
Well, they if there's been fraud committed, they absolutely should. And again, look, our fundamental challenge right now is just finding out what we're dealing with. Because one of the most important things an election supervisor has to know is how many ballots do you have in your possession? Maybe not counted yet, but how many do you have? How many have been cast and are in your possession? They need to know that regularly, every day. That's one of the most important things they do. Their inability or unwillingness to tell us sounds the alarm bell. Because why would you not tell me if you have 10, 20, 30, 40,000 ballots? You get suspicious about it. So I just think now one of the keys for the last 48 hours is we want people to be paying attention to all this. I think the more people are paying attention, the less likely it's going to be that we have anything improper happen that could impact the outcome. In the end, the outcome is what it is. There's going to be an automatic recount. But we are dealing in Broward County with an election supervisor of a history of violating the law in ways that have impacted elections results in the past.
And there's two things I notice people are doing to you. They're attacking you as a conspiracy theorist, and then the fact that you can't actually get physical access to what's going on. They say, hey, can you prove it? Well, look, you can't. If a house is on fire, you can say the house is on fire, but you can't prove everything that took place in the house. I mean, you're supposed to prove the negative.
Yeah, no, but this is not. I can prove this, and here's the proof. If you ask the Department of Elections of Broward County how many ballots have been cast in Broward County, they cannot tell you. They will tell you these are how many ballots we have reported. They will not and cannot tell you how many ballots they have received and have been cast. So there's the proof right there. That's a violation of law right there. I can prove that they're not reporting every 45 minutes as required by law by simply sending you a screenshot of their own webpage. I can prove that there's a court order against them for having destroyed ballots in the past. I can prove that in the past they have opened absentee ballots or mail ballots before the prescribed time by law. So all these things are provable. They're absolutely provable. There's no dispute about any of that. Can I prove that someone went in and stole a ballot and changed the results and in favor of the Democrats? No one's alleging that right now. What we want to know is what's going on here, because it is highly suspicious at the least to be able to produce 50, 60,000 additional ballots since the end of the election cycle. And nobody, and you not have told anybody. They had told everybody on Monday night we got 60,000 more ballots to count. They never did it. Every day it's just a rolling tally, but a refusal to tell us how many. All that is provable. And those who are overlooking it, frankly, have shown that what they care more about winning elections than the integrity of our democracy.
Well, this raises the question, if this is all provable, and it is, does the state have the authority to take over the election supervisory role in a county like Broward County?
I don't know the answer to that because she's an elected supervisor. I know the state has the authority to suspend her from office for incompetence, which happened with the previous election supervisor in 2003 when Jeb Bush was governor. Whether the state can step in and actually take over the function of counting and how it's operated, I honestly don't know the answer to that. I mean, there is an answer. I'm just not. That's not a field that I know the answer to. But I think the most important task we have at hand now is to make sure that they finish their work There's going to be a recount. No one here is arguing against the recount. They feed the papers right back into the machine. That's not going to change the outcome of this race. That's not the issue here. The issue here is how many more ballots. Are we going to wake up on Saturday morning to find out there was another 15,000 ballots that nobody knew about? Because you're undermining the credibility of the election in the eyes of the public. And, frankly, given the history of this department, now there's legitimate reason to be concerned that some wrongdoing took place, given what they've done in the past.
Let me just circle back, and then I'll let you go. On this point, you said Scott went to court, and he recently won in the last few minutes, last hour, a court decision. What was that again?
Correct. So he went to court and said, by law, you have to tell us, you have to tell everybody that asks, how many ballots do you have? How many ballots have you received? How many votes have been cast in Broward County? She has to know the answer to that. And that's one of the most important things she has an answer to. And she would refuse to give it to him. They just ignored him. So he went to court. The court took like 15 minutes of testimony and issued an order. The court found you are in violation of the Constitution, you're in violation of state law, and you will produce, by 7 p.m. Eastern Time, you will produce the access to the tallies on how many ballots you have received, how many ballots have you counted, and how many ballots remain to be counted. The law requires you to produce that. And she's under court order to do it. We'll find out here in the next few minutes whether she's actually done it.
All right, Senator Rubio, we appreciate you really hammering this because I know it's crucial to Floridians, but it's also crucial to the all the people in the United States. It's a big deal in the Senate.
Absolutely.
All right. God bless. Take care.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
All right. Well, there you have it. It is a big deal. We're going to keep an eye on that decision now and see what happens. Now, the morning schmo and soon-to-be Mrs. Schmo, she's been soon-to-be Mrs. Schmo for years, by the way. Nobody's fooled by those two clowns. And the fact is, they were accusing Rubio, among others, of being a conspiracy theorist. And that's why I asked those questions about, can you prove this or that? And you saw him go right down that list brilliantly. And I'm sure that will be reported on the Morning Schmo so their 7 viewers can see it. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Zach, Sarasota, Florida, on the Mark Levin app. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Denali, and it's an honor to speak with you tonight.
Thank you.
I just have a question for you in reference to Broward County and Palm Beach County. I know it caused a lot of tension. How from Mrs. Snipes the past 3 days.
I didn't hear you. What about Mrs. Snipes?
Based on her actions over the past 3 days, can those election results be non-counted?
I don't think so, but here's what I don't understand. If you have a deadline to tally the vote and turn it into the state, well, does the deadline mean anything if you can keep counting? It seems to me that's the deadline. Anything after that, you're out. Even the IRS has deadlines. After that, you're paying a penalty, right?
Exactly, and that's why, because they've been tampering with them for the past
we know why. We know why they do this. The reason why the Democrats don't want any standards for voting, the reasons why they don't want any rules, the reasons why they don't want to clean up the voting lists is because they cheat. They're cheaters. All the time. They're cheaters.
Yes,
That's why they wanted early voting, called motor voter, and a lot of conservatives like me said no, because it's very, very difficult to keep track of that. Or provisional ballots. What the hell is that? You can't tell somebody if somebody should be voting or not, then get out of the line. You don't get to vote. If you can't show that you're a United States citizen, you're a resident of that specific town and locality, then get out of line. I don't understand. Well, I do understand.
One more thing, Mark.
Yes, sir.
And I just wanted to say thank you very much. You have pushed my wife and I to homeschool our children and teach them about the values and principles of what this country was founded on. And you're a true patriot, and it's a true honor to speak with you.
Well, thank you, my friend. How old are you?
I'm 25, and my wife is 24.
You have any kids?
Yes, sir. We have 2 boys.
Don't hang up. I'm going to send you a copy of my father's book, Our Police. Please don't hang up. We'll get your address. I appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
So I understand in Broward County, they continue to find votes for the Democrats. And I understand they found 11,000 votes for Al Gore, Mr. Producer. I want you to think about how truly troubling immigration now is to this country. And I mean what I say. Massive illegal immigration, massive legal immigration. Massive violation of our immigration laws by people who overstay their visas. Massive efforts by Democrats to ensure that people who shouldn't vote, vote, or they vote more often than not. They fight every effort to make sure the voting rolls are accurate. They fight every effort to ensure that people provide substantive or substantial identification. And by substantial, I mean a lot. By volume, substantial. Like real identification in order to demonstrate they should be voting and affecting the nature of this government. And every time you dare confront these crucial issues, you're said to want to suppress the vote. And you're also called a racist. And I'll tell you why. Take a look at the results at this midterm election. Do you know we lost a slew of races in Texas? Do you know even Governor Abbott only got 55% or so of the vote? And $80 million wasn't spent against him. And Ted Cruz won by about 2.5%, 3%. We're told over and over again how Republican Texas is, how all the people in California are moving in, but other people are moving in too. California, just a few decades ago, was a reliably red state when it came to presidential elections. Reagan won it both times. George H.W. Bush won Texas in 1988. Reagan couldn't win today. Certainly Bush couldn't. Colorado used to be a reliably red state. Now it's a blue state. Virginia used to be a reliably red state. Now it's a blue state. Nevada had become a reliably red state. Now it's a blue state. And Florida is becoming a blue state. You can see how close these elections were. It's because of immigration, legal and illegal, ladies and gentlemen. We have two individuals who are elected to Congress who are radical leftists. They happen to be Muslims, and they were elected in parts of the country where there's a heavy number of immigrants. In one case, Somalians. And these two individuals, we keep hearing they're the first Muslims from these areas and first woman Muslim. They're also bigots. There was a wonderful story in PJ Media that pointed out how many times one of these candidates made anti-Semitic remarks. And look, this isn't my focus tonight, I'm just pointing it out. But it wasn't pointed out on CNN or MSNBC or any of the rest of it. Party first, even for the media. It wasn't pointed out at all. But we're probably within 10 years, maybe 20 years, but maybe, I think, 10 years of not being able to win the Electoral College. When we win the presidency, every time we have to thread the needle. We have to thread the needle. We have one, maybe two at most ways of winning the presidency. They have 10 ways of winning the presidency. It wasn't that way in the 1980s. It wasn't that way in the early 1990s. It's that way now because we've had a half century of unfettered, effectively unfettered immigration, legal and illegal. And these constant waves of amnesty granted by Republican and Democratic presidents have created these circumstances. Not only that, that has been a big push of the Democrat Party, ensuring that we have not the opposite of integrity when it comes to our voting rolls, plus felons voting, is one of the ways the Democrats intend to create a fairly permanent majority. Look what just happened in Florida. They voted that felons should be able to vote. Well, there happen to be over 1 million ex-felons in Florida. Now, why are the Democrats pushing for that? Because they obviously think most of the felons are going to vote for Democrats, as opposed to a law and order Republican. So their rolls get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger by hook or by crook. The enforcement of the rules get harder and harder and harder. They plant their activist judges everywhere, and then they say every vote should count, and everyone should be able to vote. What, are you against democracy? As they're destroying democracy from within. Those of you who call yourselves populists, you better get over it. You better get over it. This is a republic. The framers feared populism, that is, pure democracy, as much as they feared autocracy. They called it mob rule. I've been using this word mobocracy, certainly didn't invent it, for decades. I think it's even in some of my books. You see the growing mob. You see the mobocracy of the left. You're in support of republicanism, not populism. Your unalienable rights are unalienable rights, regardless of what your neighbor thinks, regardless of what a majority of Americans think. Those are your God-given rights. Well, then how can you be a populist? Look at your Constitution. Is that a constitution of populism? They didn't have direct election of senators. Senators were supposed to represent state governments. That was destroyed by progressive populists, Republicans, as a matter of fact. That's like this word nationalism. The media immediately says, oh, nationalism, isn't that a dog whistle? I hate that phrase now, but it's a dog whistle to the white supremacists. No, it's a dog whistle to the progressives, if you understand your history. Because the progressives constantly called themselves nationalists. Now, why did they call themselves nationalists? Because they wanted to destroy federalism. So they supported nationalism. They wanted to turn the Constitution on its head. They called it nationalism. They wanted to have federal laws, all kinds of federal laws controlling all kinds of federal stuff. They called it nationalism. Theodore Roosevelt gave a famous speech called the New Nationalism that was promoted in progressive magazines like the New Republic and the New York Slimes. These words have meaning, and it's important to understand them. This is where I disagree with the president when he says, I'm a nationalist. He's not a nationalist. But people tell him it's nationalism versus globalism. No, it's not. It's Americanism, republicanism, individualism versus globalism. And what does globalism mean? Well, globalism doesn't mean you're anti-international capitalism. It's never meant that. Globalism is the notion that we are all citizens of the world, and therefore the Constitution and American sovereignty really are to be despised. We're all people of the earth, you see. And so the whole notion of a constitution and representative republicanism and separation of powers and all the rest are very quaint, but very arcane, according to these globalists. Globalism is the opposite of national sovereignty. Now, what's national sovereignty? National sovereignty is nothing more than a nation having not only recognizable borders, but enforceable borders, and borders that are intended to be protected. The globalists at the UN and other international governing organizations seek to undermine our national sovereignty and our constitutional republicanism. And people throw terms around that they do not comprehend. I'm a national populist. No, you're not. No, you're not. This whole idea of national populism plays right into the hands of the Marxists and the Hegelians, who would agree with you. We're a people's republic, they would say. And the only way to truly realize your individuality is part of the community. The individual going in his own direction, refusing to conform, well, that person's selfish. That person is the enemy of the state. That purpose is making paradise impossible. You get my point? You believe, I believe, in Americanism, republicanism, individualism, not communism, socialism, nationalism, or populism. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.